Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to the Crystal Crawford Show and welcome to Paris. Although you will notice that this is a fake Zoom background, I am in Paris. And so if you hear sirens in the background, you'll know what's up. So the first thing I want to say before I start is that if you haven't yet gotten access to the mini course and the 30-day challenge that is my gift to you when you go to infinitebeingschool.com, please go there now. It's totally free. It's an incredible introduction to the tools of access consciousness via me, and a 30-day challenge that I used actually to stimulate getting me here in my life. And I use ever all the time to create more. So check that out. I don't have a topic for this week, which might change as I talk, but I thought I would pop on and worst case scenario, delete this because I am fresh off of a foundation class and I'm heading into a 3-week period of my life where I'm going to be taking an access consciousness class every single weekend. This next class is here in Paris. I'm actually recertifying as a Talk to the Entities facilitator. And then right after that, I'm taking Being You, Changing the World with Dr. Dane here. And right after that, I'm taking a Choice of Possibilities class with Gary Douglas. And in the middle, all of that, I'm starting a new mastermind for entrepreneurs that are ready to just like bazooka their business over the next 3 months, and a bunch of other classes I haven't created yet. So there's just so much going on, and I'm new. And I just came from London and I facilitated a foundation class, and I have so much gratitude for these tools. The other thing I'm choosing is I'm choosing to become a 3-day body class facilitator. So there's this thing going on in my world that is this deepening of what it is I'm here to create, just like so much fucking fun. It's this robust life worth living energy to get to facilitate with these consciousness tools. And I had so many conversations over the weekend with the participants in class about that ended up giving them more access to the choices that they have that nobody else has. And maybe that's the conversation. You have choices that nobody else has. There is no such thing on this planet as an equal, fair reality for all. We don't all have the same choices. We don't all have the same abilities. We don't have the same level of ambition. We don't have the same level of interest. We are different. You are different. And I don't want you to believe me, but what I want you to start to question is like, do I have choices that the people around me don't have? And if I were willing to give myself access to them, would things get greater faster? Since I said yes to going to Being You, Changing the World with Dane, it's been an interesting moment. Being You, Changing the World with Dane has no prerequisites. You don't have to have taken any other access class. It's a 3.5-day deep dive exploration with Dane into what it is to be you. I've never taken it. I've been doing access 9 years. And this year is like, now I have to as a certified facilitator. And I was resisting it. Well, usually the things that you resist are the things that will set you free the most. And so as I've been sitting with my choice to take it and leading up to the class, which is in 2 weeks, and really looking at what do I want to get out of this? What's starting to emerge in my world is all the places where I've literally just given me up. This goes hand in hand with you have choices that other people don't have. When I give myself up, things get hard. My relationship gets really hard when I give myself up. One of the ways that I gave myself up in the relationship was I didn't let myself know how much I was choosing it. About, 3 or 4 months after we moved to Panama, when it was pretty obvious that I was not having the easiest time there, I got this message from somebody who said that they cared about me a lot. And they expressed to me that they didn't think that this relationship was my best choice, and that they were just ready for me to move on with it and be as great as I was and to do just me and find somebody else. Now, this came at a time when I was already like really, really, everything that I was asking to change was up in my world. And I let that message change what I was sharing in the world. I let it change how much I was sharing, what I was sharing, the way I was sharing it. One person's energy tapped into a secret judgment that I had about myself that I allowed to change the way that I was showing up in the world. You have choices that nobody else literally has and that nobody else can see or understand. If we look again at my choice to have Andres in my life and to go through all the different various things that we have and are choosing to go through, and to really weather and let facilitate me all the different insanities that he and I choose here and there, and the gifts that we are to each other, and all the different variety of things that we expose each other to. The only person that knows what I'm doing in all of that is me. And if I rob myself of the awareness of that, and I don't allow myself to have the riches of what I'm choosing there, to know, to be, to know, to perceive and receive what I'm choosing with that incredible man, then the person who's going to miss out on that is me and him. And where I will create difficulty is in the thing that somebody told me that I shouldn't want to have, that I then bought and made real for me, and then perpetrated all over him and me. In the last month, I've been really sitting with my choices, the ones I have that I haven't yet chosen, the ones I have chosen that I haven't yet fully claimed that I've chosen, the ones that I have chosen that got me here, and the ones that I could choose. And then all the possible choices that emerge between then and there, because in every moment you're choosing and you get more choices all the time, right? So it's this constant festival of choice. But the thing I've been really looking at is this commitment to me, this being owned by what I choose, not necessarily being owned by the relationship itself, but being owned by that I'm choosing this, not being owned by, I don't even know where I was going with that, but being owned by what I choose. Like, I'm choosing this because I'm choosing this because I'm choosing this, not needing anyone to understand it, get it, validate it, accept it, align and agree with it, or resist and react to it, just knowing that I'm choosing this. And this has been occurring for me for a while now, where I've had to really sit back and look at what am I choosing, no matter what anybody else is choosing. In fact, probably back in 2015, there was this event that really rocked all of Access Consciousness around that time. A lot of people left. A lot of facilitators left. A lot of my friends left. It was one of those pivotal times in a melee of change where I could have easily jumped on the swell of leaving for all kinds of reasons. My friends are doing it, blah, 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 this and that. And instead of doing that, I sat back and I really looked at, what do I want to be with this? What do I want to be for and with Access Consciousness? What is Access Consciousness for me? Because in this melee of change, a lot of people were looking at well, Access Consciousness is wrong. Access Consciousness is this. This person was this, and so therefore this. And they were going to a bunch of conclusions, and they were using that to judge, and they were using that to separate, and they were using that to leave. And I had to sit with all that and look at it and really find out for myself what was true for me. Because this is the thing you got to get, is every single person around you is functioning from their own blend of what's important to them, what they value, what they think, what their opinions are, what their awareness is, all of it. And, everybody's got an opinion, and opinions are like assholes and they all smell. So you're constantly faced with either buying it and going along with it and aligning and agreeing, or resisting it, both of which put you in the polarization, or stepping out of all of that and going, what is this for me? And I can't tell you how much of that is present in my world right now. So I stepped out of it and I looked at what it was for me. And what I looked at empowered me in a way that almost nothing else had. I started to get a sense of the gift that access consciousness is and has been for me throughout all time, space, dimensions, and reality. That there was no other organization on the planet that could gift me in the way that this had and did and could. And that I was already and wanted to continue to choose to be someone who you could count on, who was going to be here. That was my choice. And so even 4 years later, actually, 6 months ago, I had someone message me and they were like, I know my time frames are all messed up. Hopefully you're not counting. And she was like, this thing that happened back then. She's like, how was this for you? To be honest, I had to really like think about it. I'm like, well, and then everything I just told you, like I had to look at what this was for me. I didn't have a lot of what you're talking about. It didn't do this thing that you were so affected by, which meant that I had to be willing to lose her as a friend because she needed me to align and agree with her. And I just didn't. And I'm hopeful that these various, very random, spotty examples are starting to illustrate the bigger point here, which is that if you allow yourself to be swept away by the people around you, by what they think about you, by how you're trying to equalize with them or make yourself equal to them, by you can't do this because then that'll mean you go heads into anything that you're doing to like not make waves, are these robberies to your own wealth of self. My most recent example of this is very internal. And it's that I've realized this relationship of mine is such an immense gift to me because it's more than anything else I choose, shows me where I am still not receiving, still using my awareness against me, shows me where I go unconscious at the drop of a hat, and a bunch of other beautiful things. But it's those things that really stand out to me because like in the rest of my life, I don't choose that. However, these microcosms of your life, like your relationship, like your business, like money, will show you where you're not receiving in the totality of your life, right? So I don't do this. Money doesn't expose this level of unconsciousness for me, but relationship does, which means I'm still doing unconsciousness with money that if I would allow myself to become conscious over here in relationship would translate to money and bigger classes and all these beautiful things in the world. So to me, anything that exposes where you're functioning from is an immense gift, no matter in what form it takes. So I've got a bunch of really intense things in my life that expose me. I've got money that I'm always creating and business that I'm always creating and this relationship that I'm creating, or not if I'm doing unconsciousness. Hopefully I can keep my point. So, so the biggest thing that is showing up for me right now, which is where I'm starting to get, I have a choice that I haven't yet chosen, is like, I've been letting myself get washed away in his reality. Now, is it only his reality? No, I've gotten washed away in plenty of other people's realities too, but he's my everyday, so he gets to be the lucky one. And so like he'll have a moment or he'll be changing or he's doing a thing or whatever, and I'll take it personally. I'll make it a problem. Is it 100% of the time? No, but enough of the time that I have to look at this and go, how much allowance would I have to have for me to give myself access to the choices I really have, no matter what he's got going on? Because he's always got stuff going on, as do I, right? We've always got stuff going on. So it's like when you look at two people like mashing together all the time in what we call relationship, like you can always use each other for the destruction of something, or you can use each other to like strengthen steel against steel. You know what I mean? Like I forget where this was, but it's, there's a really cool phrase that's out of my mind right now, but it's that thing of like iron sharpens iron, right? So if you put iron together, it's going to sharpen the iron. So you can do that, or you can stab each other with it. So what I've really like with everything we choose, what I'm looking at is how can I use this iron to sharpen my iron? And I was like, right now I'm using his everything to stab me. if he's got something going on, that must mean something about me, and da da da. So I started to ask myself a very different question. And this goes hand in hand with like the choices that you have that nobody else has. How much allowance would I have to have for me and the happiness that I am and the simplicity with which I move through the world and with the amount of awareness that I actually have and how complex that seems on some days? How much allowance would I have to have for me to have total allowance for him with total ease? And it's been really interesting what that's creating, because I'm simply just not choosing to go into that to anything but what works for me anymore. And it's very new, but it's this conversation of you have choices that nobody else around you has, even if those people are close to you. And it doesn't make them wrong, and it doesn't make you right. It means you have different choices, and you have different internal choices, and you have different choices. So what would you have if you weren't okay? What would you have to acknowledge about you in order to start to get that? Would you have to look at how different you are from a different point of view? Would you have to look at everything you think is wrong with you as a difference instead of a wrongness? What if you did? Like, start looking right now at all the different things that you make wrong about you, and like see if you can sit with one of them and like flip it around and go, okay, I'm making this wrong, but what if it wasn't? So for example, for me, so if I go into like his world, for example, with stuff he's got going on and stuff he's handling and dealing with, and then I judge it, and then I go into like, well, but I didn't want to make it, I'll go into something like, well, I didn't mean to make him feel that way, and that wasn't what I meant, and I'll go into defense, right? And I've been making that wrong about me. But what if what I've been making wrong about me is what's strong about me? So flip it around, right? And what I started to look at is like, wow, I have a lot of awareness of his world. What I'm doing with the awareness is I'm flipping and twisting it into something that it's not, which is what creates problems. But if all I did was have the awareness and just keep choosing what would work for me to be, what would be easier for me to function from, what I would like to choose, what I can be with me, which requires a lot of presence, then that what I thought was wrong with me just gets to be strong. I get to just be aware, and I also get to choose what's going to work for me, which then can affect him, because I'm not falling into something that he's doing and making us a different kind of soup. I'm like going, oh, I see your thing, and I'm choosing the soup. Do you want to come over here into this soup? And he can choose it or not. And I'm using him because he's close, but this is like with anybody. So these different choices. So it's like you take something that you think is really wrong with you, pull yourself away from it and go, wait, what is this? I've made this wrong, but what is this? Well, 99.99999% of everything that goes on in my world isn't mine. So this is awareness. I'm using it this way. How else could I use it? And start to get that you have choices that nobody else around you has. Somebody messaged me the other day asking for some support. I get a few of these here and there, and I sometimes I'll ask if you need a session, and other times it's just quick and dirty, and that's easy. And they asked me if I could ask them a few questions, and I said, well, I have a minute. What's up? Well, I just keep making myself wrong. I just gaslight myself constantly. And I was like, okay. And he goes, I'm just a mean person. And I said, well, okay. Like, you say that like it's a fact. What's right about you that you're not getting? Like, where in the process do you give up being and knowing and perceiving and receiving? I was like, is there a part somewhere in any part of this process where you give that up? And he's like, yeah, immediately. I just give up immediately. And then I just make myself wrong. And I was like, okay, well, what would you have to strengthen in your world to like never give you up? What would you have to strengthen? And this is the question. would you have to strengthen that no matter what anybody else is going through, you're okay? Would you have to strengthen a deep rooted allowance for yourself? Like, what would that take? And it can start very simply with like the tools in infinite being school with interesting point of view. I have this point of view. Like, what would you have to strengthen in you for that never to be a thing again? And he looked at it and he's like, thank you so much. And I said, that's a choice that you have that nobody else has. You have that choice. So I guess this is the message of today's show that I was going to look for just by opening my mouth and talking. And so thank you for being here. What choices do you have that nobody else has? Where are you trying to make yourself equal to everybody else or balance the insanities of everybody else? What if you could allow everybody else to have their choices, internal and external, and almost like put a bubble around yourself for a minute, like put an energetic bubble around yourself and go, what would I like to choose here? I'm personally playing more with happiness, which is something I've given up in favor of all kinds of things in the last year. I've given up a lot of that. I'm choosing more turn on. I'm choosing more joy of living, of being, of creating. It's not instantaneous, and I wouldn't say it's overnight, but it does come in every microsecond. And I have that choice available. I have it available, even if nobody else does. And so I'm playing with that. I'm like, what choice do I have here that nobody else does? What can I choose here that nobody else can? What would it be like to really cultivate this, even if nobody else does? And that's what I wanted to gift you today. If you didn't have to balance anybody's insanity, save anybody, bring anybody with you, equalize to anybody else, what's available to you? What can you choose just because you can? You being you and you being willing to choose what only you can choose is the inspiration the world needs. And it's the inspiration you need. What energy, space, and consciousness can you and your body be to live the choices you alone have with total ease? Share this with a friend if you loved it. Get yourself into Infinite Being School. It's my gift to you.